There is a part of you that you keep locked away, a part that feels too dangerous, too selfish, too much. You feel its pulse in moments of quiet frustration, in the sudden flash of anger when you're interrupted, in the secret fantasy that feels so wrong you push it down before it can even fully form. You have built a life around managing this hidden part, this raw and wanting energy. You have become an expert at control, at presenting a calm and acceptable version of yourself to the world. But what if I told you that this very act of hiding is the source of your deepest exhaustion? That the person you're trying so hard to protect everyone from is, in fact, the key to a more real and vibrant life? This isn't about letting chaos reign. This is about understanding the primal engine of your own mind, the part Freud called the id. This is about what happens when you stop treating your most basic self as an enemy and instead begin to listen to what it has been trying to tell you all along. You see this control play out in the quiet moments of your day, that polite smile you offer when you really want to say no, the way you meticulously plan your time, leaving no room for spontaneity, for fear of what might bubble up in the empty spaces. You feel a constant, low hum of tension in your shoulders, a background noise of irritation that you can't quite pinpoint. You might call it stress or responsibility. But it feels deeper than that. It feels like you are holding a wild animal on a very thin leash, and the effort of holding it is draining you completely. Your life becomes a series of managed interactions, calculated responses, and suppressed impulses. You are so good at it that most people never see the strain, but you feel it. In the exhaustion that follows a simple social gathering, in the lack of genuine joy even when good things happen, in the dreams that sometimes break through, filled with chaotic and confusing imagery that you quickly dismiss upon waking. This is the daily reality of living at war with a fundamental part of yourself. You are not managing your life. You are managing a prisoner, and the prison guard is just as trapped as the one behind the bars. To understand why you feel like a prison guard, we have to go back. We have to visit the quiet, formative rooms of your childhood. This is where the bargain was first struck. You were born with that raw, pulsing energy. It was your first cry for food, your immediate grab for a toy, your pure, unfiltered desire for comfort and attention. There was no filter, no management. But then, slowly, the world began to shape you. You were told, be quiet, wait your turn, don't be so selfish. Big boys don't cry. Good girls don't get angry. These weren't just instructions, they were lessons in survival. You learned that to be loved, to be safe, to be accepted, you had to put that raw part of you away. You learned that your natural desires were, in some way, wrong. Perhaps it was a parent who couldn't handle big emotions, so you learned to shrink yours to keep the peace. Maybe it was a moment of pure, childish excitement that was met with a sharp look of disapproval, and in that instant, a little door inside you closed. You made a silent promise to yourself. I will not be too much. I will not want too loudly. I will be good. And being good meant building walls. It meant creating what Freud called the ego, the mediator, the part of you that had to constantly negotiate between the wild wants of the id and the strict rules of the outside world. But a child's understanding is simple. The message you internalized wasn't just manage your impulses, it was your impulses are dangerous and unacceptable. So you didn't just learn to manage them, you learned to bury them. You sent the most alive part of yourself into the basement of your own mind and pretended it wasn't there. The problem is, it never left. It just grew quiet, and in its silence, it began to shape your life from the shadows. Every choice you make to be good instead of true, every time you swallow a no, you are reaffirming that old childhood fear, that the real you is not welcome here. And so, the war you started in childhood continues silently, in the background of your adult life. You carry this buried part of you like a secret tenant in the house of your mind, one who pays no rent but constantly rearranges the furniture when you're not looking. You feel its influence not in grand, dramatic rebellions, but in the quiet collapse of your spirit. It's the unexplained fatigue that a full night's sleep cannot fix. It's the bitterness that colors your thoughts after you've done yet another thing you didn't want to do. It's the hollow feeling after you achieve something you thought you wanted, only to find a void where satisfaction should be. This is the price of the repression. Your energy is not being spent on living, it is being spent on containing life itself. The id does not disappear, it finds other ways to speak. It speaks through your repetitive emotional patterns. You find yourself drawn to the same type of frustrating partner, or locked in the same power struggle with a different boss, or feeling the same specific flavor of resentment in different friendships. You think, why does this keep happening to me? But it isn't happening to you, it is happening because of you. The buried part of you is staging these scenarios over and over, hoping that this time you will finally understand the script. It is trying to reenact its original pain, its core desire, in a desperate attempt to be seen and resolved. You are living the same emotional story on a loop, and you wonder why you feel so stuck. It also speaks through your body. That tension in your neck, the stomach that is always slightly in knots, the headaches that arrive for no medical reason. These are not mere physical glitches. They are the whispers of the id, translated into physical pain. It is the energy of your suppressed anger, your unexpressed desire, your stifled creativity with nowhere else to go. It turns inward and begins to ache. And it speaks through your projections. The things that irritate you most in other people are very often the very qualities you have buried within yourself. You hate their selfishness because you cannot allow your own. You are infuriated by their spontaneity because you have locked away your own wildness. You are not really judging them. You are confronting the ghost of your own disowned self, and it feels like a personal attack. This is the great irony of your control. By trying to eliminate chaos, you have created a different, more insidious kind of chaos. One of internal civil war, of chronic dissatisfaction, of a life that feels like it belongs to someone else. The prison guard is growing weary. The job is a life sentence with no time off. And the prisoner is getting stronger, not by breaking the bars, but by making the entire structure of the prison, your life, feel cold, heavy, and utterly exhausting. The collapse is not a single event. It is a slow sinking into the realization that this way of living is no longer sustainable. The walls you built to keep the wildness out have become the walls of your own cage. But then there comes a moment. It doesn't always arrive with a bang. Sometimes it's a whisper in the middle of an ordinary Tuesday. You're doing the dishes, or you're stuck in traffic, and a thought drifts into your mind, clear and undeniable. I am so tired of being good. It's not a dramatic declaration. It's a quiet, this is the beginning of understanding. This is the moment you stop fighting the shadow and finally turn to look at it. Understanding is not about unleashing your inner monster. It's not about quitting your job and moving to a beach to indulge every passing whim. That is just another form of control, a reaction born from the same war. True understanding is much simpler and much more profound. It is the simple, quiet act of acknowledging that the prisoner exists. It is looking down into that basement and saying, I see you down there. You don't have to let it out. You don't have to agree with it. You just have to stop pretending it isn't there. When you do this, something shifts. The war doesn't end, But the battlefield grows quiet. You start to see your own behavior in a new light. That flash of anger when someone interrupts you? It's not you being a bad person. It's the raw, primal part of you that hates being dismissed. Finally finding a tiny crack in the wall to express itself. That secret fantasy you feel so guilty about? It's not a blueprint for action. It's a message from the id, a symbolic picture of a deep unmet need for freedom or power or connection. Freud suggested that our unconscious mind speaks in the language of symbols and dreams because it has no other way to communicate. Your irrational irritations, your repetitive daydreams, your sudden bouts of sadness, they are not random malfunctions. They are letters from a part of you that has been trying to mail them for years. Understanding is when you finally start to read the mail. You begin to realize that the id is not your enemy. It is the source of your vital energy, your passions, your will to live. It is the engine, and the ego is the driver. A driver who is terrified of the engine will never go anywhere. But a driver who understands the engine, who listens to its hum and respects its power, we can navigate the road with skill and even joy. The goal is not to let the engine drive the car. The goal is to stop being a fearful driver who is constantly trying to shut the engine off. Your desires are not the problem. The problem is the lifelong belief that your desires are dangerous. Understanding is the slow, gentle process of untangling that belief. It is realizing that you can feel a desire without having to act on it. You can acknowledge a dark thought without becoming a dark person. You can make space for the whole of who you are, the polite and the primal, the generous and the selfish, the calm and the furious, without your world falling apart. In fact, it is only when you make space for all of it that your world can finally start to feel whole. So I want to ask you a question, and I want you to be honest with yourself in the silence after you hear it. What is one desire, one impulse, one feeling that you have been treating as a dangerous secret? Locking it away to keep your world safe? Can you feel the weight of holding that door closed? This is the moment where the story changes. Not because your circumstances have shifted, but because your relationship to yourself has begun to transform. That heavy, exhausting war you've been fighting starts to lose its fuel. The energy you were using to hold that door shut, to keep that part of you in the dark, slowly becomes available again. It becomes energy for living, not just for managing. You start to notice the small ways you've been policing yourself, the automatic no you say to your own spontaneity, the immediate guilt that follows a simple want. And instead of judging it, you simply notice it. You see the childhood handprint on that reaction. You understand it. And in that understanding, a tiny piece of the wall crumbles. Life begins to feel less like a performance and more like an experience. The conversations where you force a smile still happen. But now you feel the tension in your jaw as you do it. You are aware of the cost. And sometimes, just sometimes, you might choose differently. You might say, actually, I can't do that. Not with anger, but with a simple, quiet truth that surprises even you. The world does not end. The relationship does not crumble. This is the real revolution. It happens in these almost invisible choices. It's the decision to rest when you're tired instead of pushing through out of obligation. It's allowing yourself to feel a wave of sadness without rushing to fix it or hide it. It's acknowledging a jealous thought without spiraling into self-hatred. You are no longer trying to create a perfect, conflict-free life. You are learning to inhabit the one you have with all its messy, human, contradictory parts. This is not about becoming a different person. It is about welcoming back the person you always were, but sent away long ago. The fatigue begins to lift. Not because your life is suddenly easy, but because you are no longer fighting a civil war on two fronts, against the world and against yourself. You feel a sense of integration, a fragile wholeness. The id is not in charge, and the ego is not a tyrannical guard. They begin to speak to each other. The driver listens to the engine. You start to make choices that are not just good or bad, but that are true. And in that truth, you find a vitality that you thought was lost forever. You discover that the real you is not a monster to be caged, but a source of life to be understood. Now, I want you to take a quiet moment and ask yourself this. If you were to stop holding that one secret thing at arm's length, if you were to just let it exist inside you without judgment, what space would that free up? What would you do with the energy you're no longer using to keep it buried? If this quiet understanding resonates with you, if it feels like a door cracking open inside your own mind, then consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It's a simple way to continue this conversation with yourself. And in that new space, you might begin to hear a different sound beneath the noise of your daily life. It's not a roar, not a demand, but a quiet, persistent hum. The sound of a life force that has been waiting all this time to be acknowledged. You start to notice that the world doesn't punish you for having desires. It only reflected the punishment you were already giving yourself. The real transformation isn't in changing what you feel, but in changing how you relate to what you feel. You are no longer a warden guarding a cell. You're becoming a person learning the landscape of their own soul. The exhaustion begins to feel different, less like a sentence and more like a signal, a reminder that you are alive, that you care, that you want. And in that shift, something as simple as taking a walk without a purpose or saying what you really think in a low-stakes moment can feel like a homecoming. So I want to ask you, quietly, while no one else is listening, what is the name of the desire you've been most afraid of? Not to act on it, not to unleash it, but simply to admit in the privacy of your own mind that it is there. Can you feel the slight relaxation in your chest when you stop fighting its existence? If this video felt like permission to breathe a little more deeply, to be a little more honest with yourself, then let that feeling linger. Leave a like if you want to honor that small act of self-honesty, and subscribe if you wish to continue this quiet exploration together. And now, imagine carrying that small admission with you, not as a burden, but as a quiet companion. You go about your day and you notice the subtle ways this understanding begins to soften the edges of your life. The constant internal commentary, the voice that used to critique your every impulse, begins to lose its sharpness. It's not that the voice disappears, but its power diminishes because you are no longer arguing with it. You are simply aware of it. You notice the tension in your body when a desire arises, and instead of immediately shutting it down, you take a breath. You don't have to act. You don't have to give in. You are just creating a moment of space between the impulse and the reaction. In that space, a new kind of freedom is born. It's the freedom to choose your response, rather than being on autopilot, constantly reacting from a place of fear and control. The energy you once used to suppress is now available to simply be. You might find yourself laughing more easily or feeling a genuine moment of peace for no reason at all. This is not a grand transformation that everyone can see. It is a quiet, internal rearrangement. The furniture of your mind is not being thrown about by a hidden tenant anymore. You are finally the one deciding where things go, because you have stopped fighting the fact that the tenant exists. You have opened a line of communication. And in doing so, you have ended the silent war that was costing you your life. So, here is a question for you. In this moment of quiet after the storm, what is one small, almost invisible way you could allow a suppressed part of yourself to simply exist today? Not to act on it, not to announce it to the world, but to just stop fighting its presence within you? If this quiet shift feels like a beginning for you, if it brings a sense of relief to simply be heard, then consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It's a gentle way to mark this moment of understanding and to continue exploring this path with us.